Home Studio Start Podcast.
Welcome to the Home Studio Start Podcast. We're your guides for diving deep into the tech and the craft of making really great sound at home.
That's right.
Today, we are tackling something. Well, it can seem a bit daunting, but it's absolutely vital. Studio monitor calibration.
It's one of those things people often put off.
Exactly. But our mission today is simple. Cut through that complexity, make it accessible, and show you how getting this right can genuinely transform your mixes.
Yeah, truly.
And our main source for this deep dive, it's a fantastic article right from the Home Studio Start blog called Mastering Studio Monitor Calibration for Perfect Sound Quality.
Ah, good one.
Penned by Rodrigo Marquez himself. You know, his whole thing is home recording made easy.
And he really hits it on the head in that piece. I mean, so many budding producers, and honestly, even some pros, they just kind of skip over calibration.
Yeah. What do you think that is?
Well, maybe they see it as this super technical thing, only for like the big fancy studios.
Right, like you need special gear or something.
Exactly. But here's the reality. Your room and your monitors in that room, they act like this unique filter on everything you hear. Calibration. That's about taking that filter off.
Okay, so it's about hearing the truth of your mix.
Precisely. So it sounds right everywhere. Headphones, car stereo, everywhere. Without it, you're basically mixing blind, just guessing what your music actually sounds like outside your own four walls.
Okay, so you're saying it's a game changer. Let's unpack that.
Yeah.
For someone listening who's maybe got decent monitors but hasn't calibrated, what's the biggest, most immediate mistake they're likely making?
Oh, it almost always comes down to translation. That's the key word.
Translation. Meaning how it sounds on different systems.
You spend hours, right, getting that mix perfect in your studio.
Yeah.
The bass hits just right. The vocals are crisp.
Sounds amazing on your setup.
Totally.
Yeah.
Then you play it in your car or maybe on your friend's little Bluetooth speaker.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Suddenly it's all muddy or maybe really harsh and thin, or the bass just vanishes. That's the classic sign. You weren't hearing your mix accurately. You were hearing your room.
Ah, okay. So it's less about making your room sound good in some subjective way and more about making the room acoustically transparent so it doesn't lie to you.
You nailed it. Rodrigo uses this great analogy in the article. Think of calibration like tuning an instrument before you play.
Okay. Yeah.
You wouldn't play a gig with an out-of-tune guitar, right? It'd sound awful.
Definitely not.
Well, calibration does the same for your monitors. It tunes them to your specific space by adjusting volume levels, frequency response, or how they handle highs and lows in their physical placement.
So give you that honest baseline. Sonic honesty, I like that.
Exactly. It's the foundation for everything else.
Okay, that analogy really clicks. Because otherwise you're trying to build this amazing track on like shaky foundations. So if we accept this as crucial, where does someone even begin? What's step one?
Well, Rodrigo points out quite rightly that you start with the room itself before you even touch the monitors.
Room, okay.
Yeah, and a really fundamental step is what's called room treatment.
Acoustic panels and that sort of thing.
Exactly. Strategically placing things like acoustic panels to cut down on reflections, especially those annoying echoes, and also absorbing unwanted frequencies. Bass frequencies are often the big culprit. They tend to build up in corners.
Ah, the dreaded muddy corners.
You got it. Even just a few panels can massively improve the accuracy of what you're hearing. It gives you a much clearer picture.
And there's that story in the article about Mike, right? The producer struggling with muddy mixes.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. He was pulling his hair out because his tracks sounded great in his studio, but just fell flat everywhere else.
None there.
We all have.
Yeah.
But then he actually did. Calibrated his monitors, added some basic room treatment. Rodrigo says it was a drastic improvement. Suddenly his tracks were clearer. They translated beautifully. It just shows what a world of difference it makes.
Wow. Okay, so the room is paramount. You can't just ignore it.
Absolutely not. Mike's story really underlines how vital the environment is. A good space enhances accuracy. A bad space, well, it just creates endless headaches no matter how fancy your monitors are.
Garbage in, garbage out, sonically speaking.
Pretty much.
So let's dig into that room aspect more. Room characteristics. Rodrigo talks about ideal shapes, like square or rectangular with symmetrical walls. Why does the shape matter so much?
It's all about how sound waves bounce around, basically. Physics.
Oh,
Haha, no, it's simpler than it sounds. In a small, perfectly square room, for example, bass waves, which are really long, tend to reflect back and forth between the parallel walls and build up in the corners.
creating like hotspots.
Exactly. We call them standing waves or room modes. They create these artificial peaks and dips in the bass response. So your ears get fooled into thinking there's way more or way less bass than there actually is.
Leading to those muddy mixes, my cat.
Precisely. A rectangular room, especially if the walls aren't perfectly parallel, tends to disperse the sound more evenly. It gives you a much more honest, less colored listening experience.
Okay, that makes total sense.
Mm.
It's about avoiding those acoustic traps.
Yeah.
What about the surfaces in the room? Like, should I cover everything in carpet or are hard walls better?
Good question. It's about balance. You want to avoid both major reflection and major absorption issues.
So, not too live, not too dead.
You got it. Really hard surfaces, concrete, glass, tile, they cause nasty echoes, flutter echoes. It just smears the sound.
Okay, so hard surfaces are bad.
Well, too much hard surface area is. But the opposite is also a problem. If you have super thick carpets, heavy curtains everywhere.
Like a recording booth from the 70s?
Kinda. It can absorb too much sound, especially the high frequencies. Your room ends up sounding dull, lifeless, dead. You lose important details.
Right. So you need a mix.
Exactly. Rodrigo suggests balance. Like putting up a few acoustic panels helps tame reflections without killing the room's natural vibe, you know? Keeps some warmth.
Okay. And then, even if the room is pretty good, where you put the monitors within that room matters hugely, right? Location, location, location.
Absolutely critical.
Rodrigo's advice is pretty clear. Keep them away from walls, ideally like 1 or 2 feet.
Yes, that's super important. I bet a lot of people listening have theirs pushed right up against the wall.
Guilty as charged in the past. I always thought my mixes had way too much bass.
That's exactly why. It's called the boundary effect. Bass frequencies get artificially boosted when the speaker is too close to a wall or corner. Your ears get tricked again.
Sneaky physics.
Totally. So pulling them out helps. And then there's the famous equilateral triangle trick.
Ah, yes, the triangle. Explain that again.
It's simple but crucial. Imagine a triangle where the corners are your two monitors and your head. Each side should be the same length.
So if the monitors are, say, 3 feet apart,
You should be sitting 3 feet away from each of them, forming that perfect triangle. That's your sweet spot.
why is that the sweet spot?
Because it ensures the sound from both speakers reaches your ears at precisely the same time. That gives you the clearest stereo image and the most accurate sound.
Got it. And it's not just placement. Rodrigo even mentioned lighting and background noise. Seems minor, but
Not minor at all during long sessions. Think about it. Harsh, flickering fluorescent lights, they cause eye strain, fatigue.
makes it harder to focus.
Absolutely. Soft, warm lighting is way better for concentration. And background noise. Well, that's kind of obvious, right? If you can hear traffic outside or the washing machine.
Your critical listening is compromised.
Definitely. Minimizing distractions is key. Maybe involve some basic soundproofing or just choosing the quietest spot in the house. Every little bit helps create that accurate perception bubble.
Okay, this is great. We've prepped the room, thought about basic placement. Now, how do we actually measure what the room and monitors are doing? This is where the tools come in, right? Rodrigo calls them your best friends.
He does, and he's right, because guessing just doesn't cut it. You need objective data to know what to adjust. Flying blind leads to more problems.
So what are these essential tools?
Okay, first up, the essential measurement tools. Number 1, a measurement microphone.
Which is different from my vocal mic.
Oh yeah, totally different. These mics are designed to have a super flat, accurate frequency response across the whole spectrum. They don't color the sound like a vocal mic does.
Any examples?
Sure. Rodrigo mentions classics like the Earthworks M30, that's kind of a high-end standard, but also more affordable options like the Behringer ECM 8000 do a really solid job for home studios.
Okay, measurement mic. What else?
You need an audio interface to plug that mic into your computer. Something reliable with clean preamps like a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 is a popular choice. It just needs to accurately capture the signal from the mic.
Makes sense. Mic, interface, then the software.
Then the software. Yeah, software for calibration. Rodrigo highlights 2 main players. First, there's Room EQ Wizard, usually just called REW.
I've heard of that one. It's free, right?
Right. It is. Which is amazing for how powerful it is. It analyzes your room acoustics, shows you detailed graphs of your monitor's frequency response, all the peaks and dips caused by the room.
So you can see the problems objectively.
Exactly. And then you can use that info to make targeted EQ adjustments, either on your monitors if they have controls or with software EQ.
Okay, REW for the deep dive. What's the other option?
The other big one is SonarWork Sounded Reference. This one isn't free, but it's known for being more user-friendly.
More automated, maybe?
Yeah, pretty much. It guides you through the measurement process and then creates a correction profile that runs in the background, automatically adjusting the sound from your monitors and headphones to compensate for room issues and speaker inaccuracies.
So it provides the fix directly.
Kind of, yeah. It aims for a consistent, accurate sound target. Great if you want a more streamlined solution.
Cool. So we had the tools. Any tips for actually using them effectively? Rodrigo gives some practical advice, right?
He does. Crucial tips. First, positioning matters immensely. Where do you put that measurement mic?
In the middle of the room.
Nope. Right where your head normally is when you're mixing. Exactly at ear level in your listening position, your sweet spot.
Okay. Capture what you hear.
Precisely. Second, don't rely on just one single measurement. Your room sounds slightly different even inches away.
So move the mic around a bit.
Yeah, take several measurements in a small area around your main listening spot. The software usually averages these out to give you a more comprehensive picture, smoothing out little anomalies.
Smart. Get an average.
And finally, the most important part, use the data. Analyze those graphs, see where the problems are, then make informed adjustments, maybe move a speaker slightly, add an acoustic panel, tweak an EQ setting. It's about data-driven decisions.
No more guesswork.
Exactly.
Okay, this leads us perfectly into looking even closer at monitor positioning. Because you could have the best room treatment, the best tools, but if the speakers are just pointed wrong.
You're still shooting yourself in the foot, acoustically speaking. Yeah, those final inches and angles make a huge difference in perception.
So let's nail down understanding the listening position. We mentioned the equilateral triangle.
Right, let's reinforce that. Distance from your left ear to the left speaker should be exactly the same as the distance from your right ear to the right speaker, and D, the same as the distance between the two speakers themselves.
Forming that perfect triangle.
Perfect triangle. If they're, say, 4 feet apart, you sit 4 feet back from the midpoint between them. That creates the optimal stereo image and accuracy. That's the sweet spot.
Gotcha. And it's not just about distance apart, it's height too, right? Height matters.
Hugely important. Rodrigo specifies that the tweeters, the smaller drivers that handle high frequencies, should be aimed directly at your ears, at ear level when you're sitting in your mixing chair.
Why the tweeters specifically?
Because high frequencies are very directional, like little beams of sound. If the tweeters are too low, you lose clarity and top-end detail. Too high, same problem. The sound literally goes over or under your head.
Affects the stereo image too, I bet.
Definitely. Leads to a smeared or inaccurate sense of where things are panned. So getting that height right is crucial for frequency balance and imaging.
How do you adjust the height easily?
Monitor stands are ideal. They decouple the speaker from the desk too, which is good. Acoustic isolation pads can help lift them a bit and reduce vibrations. And Rodrigo even says, hey, if you're on a budget,
Stack of books.
stack of sturdy books. Whatever gets those tweeters to ear level safely.
Resourceful. Okay, and let's hit avoiding reflection issues. Again, specifically tied to placement. We said keep them away from walls. Why, again, is that muddy sound happening?
Right. When the sound wave leaves the speaker, some goes forward to you, some goes backward towards the wall. If the wall is too close,
The backward wave bounces right back.
instantly.
Okay.
And it combines with the direct sound coming from the speaker. But because it traveled a bit further, it's slightly delayed or out of phase.
Causing interference.
Exactly. Phase cancellations and boosts at certain frequencies, especially in the low, mids, and bass, creates that muddy, smeared, undefined sound. Keeping them at least a foot, maybe more, away from the back wall gives that reflected sound wave more distance to travel and dissipate.
Less direct interference.
Less interference. You can often literally hear the low end tighten up and clarify just by pulling the speakers forward a bit. Rodrigo says, trust your ears on this one. Move them. Listen. Does it sound clearer, more open?
That makes sense.
I-
And he shared another story, right, about a friend whose mixes were just sounding off.
Yeah, another great real-world case. This budding producer friend had his monitors crammed against the wall, angled weirdly.
Common setup, probably.
Very common. But once they actually applied these principles, pulled the monitors out, set up the equilateral triangle, got the tweeter height right,
Big difference.
Rodrigo says it transformed his mixes overnight. Suddenly, remarkable clarity. He could finally hear what was actually going on and make confident mixing decisions. It just works.
Okay, fantastic. So let's say someone's done all this. They've treated the room, positioned carefully, used the tools, calibrated. Are they set for life? Good to go forever?
Wouldn't that be nice? But no, Rodrigo makes a really key point about the post-calibration phase. It's not a one-and-done thing. Maintaining that accuracy requires ongoing attention.
Oh, okay, it drifts.
Things change. Your environment isn't static. So the first step post-calibration is to constantly evaluate your listening environment.
How do you do that?
By using reference tracks. Play songs you know incredibly well, commercially released tracks you admire across different genres maybe. Listen critically. How do they sound now in your calibrated space?
Looking for inconsistencies.
Exactly. Does the bass sound balanced, or is it suddenly way too loud or too quiet compared to how you know the track should sound? If it's overwhelming, maybe the monitors have crept too close to the wall again, or maybe there's still a standing wave issue you need to tackle.
So the reference tracks reveal lingering problems.
Precisely. And Rodrigo suggests if you identify issues like too much bass boom, that's when you might look at more specific treatments like bass traps in the corners, or maybe diffusers on the back wall to scatter reflections more naturally.
Got it. Use references to diagnose. And then what about adjusting the monitors themselves? Most have some basic EQ controls, right?
They often do. And after your main calibration, you might need to adjust your monitor settings slightly based on that critical listening with reference tracks.
So fine-tuning.
Yeah, small tweaks. For instance, if everything consistently sounds a bit too bright or harsh, maybe knock the treble control on the monitor back just a tiny bit.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it's slightly muddy in the low mids, maybe a small cut there if your monitor allows.
What's the key here?
Small adjustments. Rodrigo really emphasizes this. Don't make huge EQ swings on the monitors themselves. That can cause more problems. Just subtle refinements based on careful listening.
Right. Don't undo the calibration, just refine it.
Exactly. And that leads to the final point. Regularly check and recalibrate.
Because things change.
Things definitely change. You move furniture around, you get new gear. Even like big seasonal shifts in humidity can subtly affect room acoustics.
Wow. Humidity.
Yeah, it can affect how sound travels, especially high frequencies. The point is, your calibrated environment won't stay perfectly calibrated forever.
So how often should you recheck?
Rodrigo suggests scheduling regular check-ins, maybe every few months. Or definitely do it if you make any significant changes to your room or set up new desk, different monitors, move things around.
Just run the measurement process again.
Run the measurements again, check your reference tracks, make sure everything still sounds accurate and balanced. It's like maintaining any precision instrument. Keep it tuned up.
Okay, that's a really practical way to think about it. It's an ongoing commitment.
It really is a commitment to hearing accurately.
So let's bring this all together. What does this deep dive really mean for everyone listening, whether you're just starting out or you've been at it for a while?
I think it means understanding that monitor calibration isn't just some optional techie thing.
Right. It's fundamental.
Absolutely. We've seen how understanding your room, getting that monitor placement right, using things like the equilateral triangle and tweeter height, using the measurement tools.
And then keeping it maintained.
It's all essential. It's about stripping away the room's influence so you can actually hear your music honestly. So it translates everywhere.
It's the foundation for reliable mixes.
Totally. So Rodrigo's final piece of advice is really just do it.
Yeah.
Now that you have this knowledge, grab those tools, even REW, which is free, make the adjustments, listen critically. Start producing sound that doesn't just sound good in your room, but genuinely shines on every system.
Don't leave it to chance anymore. Commit to that accuracy.
Exactly. You will hear the difference instantly.
So here's something to think about as you go off and potentially start this process, or maybe just reevaluate your current setup.
Mm-hmm.
As you fine-tune your space, as you get closer to that truly accurate sound, what new things might you suddenly hear in those reference tracks you thought you knew inside out?
That's interesting, like hidden details.
Yeah. What tiny reverbs, subtle delays, or quiet background parts might suddenly become clear? And maybe even more excitingly, what unexpected creative choices might this newfound clarity inspire in your own music now that you can trust what you're hearing?